people who are certainly over the age of 80, not necessarily just pensioners, should they face a proper cognitive test to drive? Because an inquiry has ruled that a driver aged 91 with dementia, this was up in Edinburgh, who killed a toddler, should not have been behind the wheel. And I'm afraid, I have to say I'm probably in support of this. At the moment, my understanding is, Kevin, a very good morning to you. At the moment, my understanding is that after the age of 70, I think, you just more or less have to self-certify that you're OK to drive, don't you?
That's exactly the truth, yeah. As soon as you get to 70, you apply to renew your licence. You have to mention when you renew your licence if your health has changed in that time and could it affect your driving.
Right.
But more or less what you're doing is you are just saying, I'm fine, and I just renew your licence.
Right.
There's no sort of like medical checks behind it at all.
Right.
It's reliant on yourself to do that.
And is it something that you have to do more often when you get older? So, for example, you know, I think my driving licence goes for 10 years. How long does it go for if you renew it at 70?
I think it's the same thing. You carry on. I think it's 3 years. So every 3 years, what you have to do is you renew your licence.
OK.
But it's the same process. You know, it's almost like a self-certificate. And you just say that you are unfit to drive still.
Right.
There is no medical background checks or anything like that. It's literally the person that says, yes, I'm fit to drive.
Right. And after this terribly sad case, I watched it on the news last night of a little boy who was killed in Edinburgh, and a woman was trying to do a three-point turn and somehow managed to accelerate into what looked like where the pavement was. Are you one of those people who thinks there should be something more strict that they have to do?
I think so. I think this is something like, you know, potentially you pass your test at 17 and you get no further training at all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to take any training, but we know as you get older, what's happening, we get slower, our reaction time's slow, and that's not just, you know, that's just normal. But what happens if you get cases like dementia, and I have personal reasons behind this, but we change the way we drive, we get slower, and we need to be training people or putting plans in place so that we don't want to take people off the road unless they're unsafe. But you know, these things need to be put in place so that people are aware of what's actually happening and notice those changes. Doing a three-point turn might be something different to the norm of what these people do, and that can affect what they do, because the thinking process changes because it's not what they normally do. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, how would it work practically, though? Would you ask people to go somewhere? Because, I mean, we've talked often about how hard it is for people to see doctors. I mean, you wouldn't want to put the extra burden, I suppose, on a doctor to say you now have to examine everybody over the age of 80 to make sure they're able to drive.
Well, there's assessment centres. So if you know you've got something potentially, you know, medically wrong with you, well, these assessment centres are there to help you and get you back on the road safely. But there's also driving instructors. You know, there's special driving instructors that are trained to deal with elderly drivers, and just take people through the process of what might happen. No one wants to go on the road and be unsafe.
No.
But what it is just trying to make sure that, you know, you are doing what you should be doing and what you're saying when you apply for those licenses. Are you safe?
Yes.
You know, the roads have got so much busier now, so we need to make sure change doesn't affect anybody.
No, true. But I guess there will be those who might say, you know, is it right that you want to effectively victimise a lot of older people who will probably have to find money to get these assessments done and will probably have to find time to get them done, and who might just feel like, you know what, it's more trouble than it's worth, I'm just going to stop driving, and then suddenly they don't go out much anymore.
Well, I think this is where if you start, well, let's just say at 70, when you need to renew your licence, if you put a plan in place so that you drive, think about the time of day you're driving, thinking about, you know, is there an alternative way to get to where you want to go? And we're not, you know, older people rely on their cars. We are a generation that people want to, you know, use their cars because it's easier. The public transport's not fantastic. So Let's put a plan in place for these people so that they notice when driving's getting harder, when it's getting more stressful. Is there different times of the day that they can drive? Can they share the driving with someone else? Can they get a taxi? You know, these are all the things that should be discussed. It's not I'm going to carry on driving. This is my life and this is what I should be doing. You know, I think there's so many things we can put in place if we start when we renew our licence.
Because only yesterday, funnily enough, we were talking about younger drivers, because we spoke to the mother of a young man who was killed, unfortunately, in a car crash in Wales. You might remember it. Him and his friends plunged off the road into a ditch and basically ended up drowning. And we were talking about whether you need to put more sort of stricter rules in place, really, for drivers who are under the age of, say, 20, so that they're not allowed to do certain things. Yeah.
And the thing is, we're talking about the inexperience there, but when we get to the older generation, what I think is it's harder to rely on change. We don't think as quickly. You'll find a lot of older people will drive the same route at the same time. And my dad suffered from dementia, and what I had the tough job was of contacting the DVLA and saying, this person's not fit to drive. Yeah. And that's really, really hard when someone's been driving all their life and drove for a living. To say someone, you're not safe to drive, it's really, really hard, because you're taking away their freedom. But and I tried to explain it, what could have happened if he had stayed on the road? You know, he suffered from, dementia and early stages, but you could see the change in him. He wouldn't start to drive different places. And this is what we're saying. If you can have a chat, an assessment with people, you notice these changes that are happening, then we can put things in place from that point to when they get older. And hopefully, we don't have these reports on the news that someone's done this or done that. And that's what we want. We want the roads to be a safer place.
Yeah. Kevin, good talk. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin Fielder, co-founder at Confident Drivers.